One thing that I wanted to follow up on before this call ends, and this was mentioned on a call before, either a week or two ago, was major exchanges, particularly exchanges who are block producers, listing EOS based projects. I know that was something that the foundation said that they were going to work on, and we were going to work on as the community. So uh, that's one thing that I wanted to ask and see if we've gotten any progress on.
I'm guessing this is directed at me, but can you be a little bit more specific?
Right, like for instance, like Binance or Big One Exchange, major exchanges that are collecting block rewards that are block producers. A lot of them don't have EOS based projects or a lot of EOS based projects. So for myself with Challenge DAC and our community, for instance, if a Binance or a Big One Exchange or some of these exchanges that are big, large like Bitfinex were to list a project like ours, it would really help our community, and I think would help the EOS community as a whole. To have more exposure on the applications that are using EOS.
Have you listened to the video that I did in terms of what the base requirements are in general? And yes, Hernan, you mentioned Shiba. So the day that one of the EOS projects does $400 million per day in trade volume, then we'll be able to compare apples to apples. But have you been able to listen to that video and get a sense of what is required? And have you tried applying, or have you gone through the base steps?
Yes, we've done some of the steps we've gone through. I mean, we haven't done a $500,000 legal opinion or anything like that, but I know that in those
Yeah,
videos,
a legal opinion should not be $500,000. The
or
the average would be between, let's say, 5 and 50,000, but I would say that 20,000 or so is what I've seen. Let's say more average,
right, and a lot of times
but
just
they're
communication.
specific to a particular exchange, right? So you need to work with the exchange to know in which jurisdiction you're looking at that legal opinion. And yes, throw all of this out of the window if you've got a $50 billion market cap and you're making ridiculous volume per day, then yeah, they're going to offset that risk because you're going to make money. Sure.
Right,
But
and
have
I
you
know
gone
that
through the base component?
we have, yeah, we've done different every exchange, the exchanges that we've communicate with, they've had different requirements, and but
And
I
for
know
example, what is your 24-hour volume? It's getting
uh
quite personal now for your particular project, but I think it's important for people to understand that a large
oh
part of
yeah,
this is
sure.
financial.
Yeah, it's there's sometimes that is low with a few $100s, if even that. But I know that you mentioned in for other foundations like the Ethereum Foundation or foundations
Mm.
like that, they had a foundation that was in a way pushing or pulling for certain projects to get on. They were able to develop relationships with exchanges and that sort of thing. And we've been behind the ball a little bit since the EOS Foundation got set up a few years later. And I know that in those videos they were mentioned that there was going to be work
Well,
done
they're
on.
able to amplify, or they're able to leverage their treasuries. So what I mean by leverage their treasuries is, for example, let's say um, a particular foundation started with 30% or 40% of all the token supply. They end up with a lot of tokens. So disregard the monetary value of the tokens, just the amount of tokens themselves. Those tokens can be put towards liquidity provision in for a particular project, right? So for example, your project, they would ask you to put a certain amount of your tokens, but you also need the other side of the token to be able to create liquidity. Because if your token itself has a particular value, but there's no liquidity depth and there's no trade. You just said that, for example, certain days you barely have a few $100s worth of volume. That means that there's no liquidity depth behind your token. You essentially, for a period of time, and this is where people have mentioned, some projects don't have market makers, for a period of time, you need the market makers in the back end to be able to support that liquidity, and that comes with a cost. At some point, the idea is you have enough organic volume that there's no longer a need for market makers, because the community itself and the amount of attraction to your product itself, your project itself, supports that liquidity. It supports the buy orders and the sell orders. What I'm hearing from your project right now is that there's very little traction in the back end, so it would make that extremely difficult. So then the idea is that the foundations in other ecosystems have enough tokens to be able to select some projects and essentially give them that financial boost. We are working towards being able to do that. As I've mentioned before, and for example, like last week in the call, the likely next step towards direct financial contributions through our grant framework will come in the next season of Pomelo, where we're going to be able to give direct grants outside of the matching pool without diluting the matching pool. So after the fact, that is, let's say, step 2, or that's the next thing in your roadmap. Eventually, and Ted, so people are asking what has Ted been doing? One of the things that he's been doing is working on that grant framework in the background. One of the following steps, if not the following step after that, would be the component that would be similar to Web3 Foundation, where we're able to give grants outside of Pomelo, outside of direct contribution Pomelo or matching pool in Pomelo, in different levels. And then maybe that capital would help you to be able to either pay your legal opinion, but you said you have one, but let's say you need another one for a particular exchange, and then also help you build maybe a stronger MVP, so you can start having more volume, and or maybe that funding goes towards the market making services. We're heading there, but no, we're not there yet.
Hydro, the music man, has entered.
Am I the only one that's hearing music, or?
No, me too.
I can hear it too.
I hear it too.
Where is it? You guys still hear it?
Yeah.
It's a dance part.
Not anymore.
There was something wrong with my audio.
It's Fleetwood Mac,
that was
man.
my
This is
computer. I'm checking all my tabs, thinking.
it's Fleetwood Mac. It's one of my it's one of the greatest albums of all time, in my opinion. Rumors from Fleetwood Mac, 1974, I think.
Don't tease us like that, Yana. Giving us just the intro of the song and then cutting us off. Jeez.
I thought someone was.
You're doing it again. Yeah. So all that to say, we're heading there. We're not there yet, but yes, we'd like to be able to offer financial support, but in a framework that would be open and transparent for all, so that everybody would get a chance of being able to do this. But I really want to be clear as well that there's no way that we can just support every project and get every project the support they need to be listed. Like, the project does need to have a certain amount of traction, size, volume. It's not that simple. So if you're saying, for example, that your project right now has a few $100s of daily volume, you're still a very far away from being able to be listed on a major exchange.
So can I jump in there, because it's a very heated topic, and I also brought it up. So first of all, thanks for hitting that my replies head on. But I think so. There are two parts of this, right? One is, I think the liquidity issue is kind of a chicken and egg, right? Because if a project is only accessible through Nudix or DeFi Box, and we are only the only ones that are getting access to the token, of course there's going to be low liquidity, and that is something that a big chicken like Binance or Huobi or OKX could help us increase that liquidity.
No, that's where you're wrong. Binance is not going to give you a bunch of free money behind there. They don't do that for other projects either. That's not how it works. If you're trading a few $100s per day, even if you're Shiba or something, because you used Shiba as an example, any exchange is not going to give you $10 million to give liquidity behind your project. You have to have a strong business case. You need to showcase that you have a roadmap to make money for yourself and for your project. And then you need to have organic growth and organic volume. It's It's not as simple as just saying Binance is going to give or put $10 million behind your project of liquidity. It doesn't work that way. It has nothing to do with whether or not they're BPs. There's a cost to them. And the amount of
how
money
do
that
you
you're
start
talking
it?
about in terms of BPs is completely set. Right now, the average block producer after, let's say, giving back after the block production rewards are taken, it's about 95% dilution, which is it's about in line with all the other chains, the commission rate. So it's between 5 and 10% or so. So block production on EOS right now, and actually if you take Binance as an example, Binance pays way more than they make from block production. It's not even close. And so this idea that they're making a lot of money and they could instead list your project, it doesn't work that way. It's not even close from a numbers point of view. So you're right, though. How do we get more money into EOS? That's a larger problem, or that's a larger concern. That's a larger issue to address that has nothing to do with listing tokens.
Yeah,
we haven't had a project that has attracted enough capital, enough momentum in the greater ecosystem to warrant a listing in top tier exchanges. And you can laugh at Shiba, or you can laugh at Dogecoin all you want. They have massive communities, regardless of the underlying nothing. They've got massive communities. It's not apples to apples. You're talking about, for example, Shiba Inu has more daily volume than EOS. It is higher ranked in market cap than EOS. You're cherry picking something compared to something that perhaps has a few $100s a day of organic volume.
Well, yeah, I just
it's not even close.
I was just
and it's a numbers
Shiba
game.
because you mentioned all the kind of the hard research that the exchange does.
The day that Elon Musk, the day that Elon Musk tags EOS starter, you won't have that problem anymore, and you'll be listed on every exchange you want.
In here we say inshallah, which is like amen, from your mouth to God's will.
We're so far away from that, Hernan.
But that's the thing. We need to work together into breaking that kind of cycle and that chicken and egg situation, because unless we have projects that achieve good traction, market cap, and good liquidity, and that people that are building that they know that are building on EOS know that they have a chance, and we get the connections to get those listings on KuCoin and Binance and Huobi, then it's chicken and egg. That no one's going to want to build on EOS if they know that their expectation of a market cap is 1/100th of a token that doing the same will have if they just build it on Polygon or on Solana.
Correct. Yes. And what you see in other ecosystems is very much the success stories. So a good example would be NFTs. When you look at NFTs that are successful in Ethereum, you pinpoint to a few. What you don't see is the other 1,000 projects that aren't that successful that are building on Ethereum. So they definitely have more capital, and the ones that are successful definitely benefit from a way larger pool of accessible funds. Sure. But the competition is also much greater. Now, the underlying problem of EOS itself, you're right. We are trying to address this, and we have to address this as a community. This is not just the project within EOS, it's EOS itself. EOS itself is now in the, depending on which website you look at, but either just below 50 or above 50. If you look at CoinMarketCap or CoinGecko, that applies to EOS itself at this point, let alone the projects building on EOS. And that's why we see, like, for example, John mentioned earlier, projects that leave. Because it does seem like it's easier in other chains. The reality is not that easy either. The competition is much greater. But if you do make it, there's way more capital. But it's more than just the capital. It's the tools, It's the libraries, it's the communities, it's the support from the foundations, it's the branding that hasn't been tarnished over a few years. Yeah, let's not sugarcoat it. The hill that we have to climb, or the mountain that we have to climb, is extremely steep and extremely tall. Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
And that's what we're trying to change. And that will require a concerted effort between everybody. Like right now we have, I can't see the number anymore, but we had, let's say, 65 people on this call. Everybody plays a part in this.
So one thing that we did work on this week